Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome everybody to the Indosoft Web Studio Stump the Expert webinar. My name is Fabio Teresino. I will be hosting this webinar, and as most of you know, Indosoft has been hosting those webinars for quite some time now, and we have received very positive feedback from you, from our customers and partners. And one of the requests was to have more time for specific questions about your own projects, some additional tricks, pretty much any kind of questions unrelated to one specific topic. So we decided to create this webinar session, which is pretty much an open Q&A, and all the participants are welcome to write your own questions into the Q&A box from the WebEx toolbar at the top of your monitor, or even on the chat box, also from the WebEx toolbar. So at any time, if any of you have any questions about the products, if you would like to see any demonstrations, feel free to write your questions in the toolbar, and I will be more than happy to address each one of them individually. So getting started, one common question here is I have a project that I want to develop using the Software Studio, but which module I should start with? Graphics, database, communication drivers, what's the best way to start? So pretty much the most important thing is that you plan your application before you get started. So it's not so important in which module you start, as long as you understand or have a good idea about the scope of development for the entire project or most of the project before you start. So you can start with the correct architecture. Typically, but not necessarily, most projects start with the tags database definition. So where you create your classes, your tags, arrays, create pretty much the core tags structure for the application, since this core configuration will be used through all the other modules. When you create a driver worksheet, you pretty much link tags to addresses in the PLC. A database worksheet, you link tags to registers in a database. When you create screens, you link tags to animations in the objects. So it makes a lot of sense to create some tags at least when you start your project. Then, in most cases, we create the screens after creating the tags, and then the scripts and the communication interfaces with the PLCs or with databases. But doesn't mean that you have to necessarily follow this order or any other order. One of the advantages in the Software Studio is the fact that you can create tags from anywhere, and then even when you are creating screens, and then create worksheets to talk to the PLCs, go back and create more tags, more screens, so you can evolve your project naturally. But again, the most important thing is to plan ahead, so everything that you create in the application is consistent and flexible enough to evolve as the project continues. Looking for additional questions here. How do I create a filter for the grid object? So in the Software Studio, we have many native objects, and one of them is the grid. So I'm going to create a new project here. So Stump Expert Afternoon. Let's create a local interface project. Very well. So in this new project, I can go to the screens folder to insert a new screen, and here grid from the data objects, and create a grid control on the screen. The grid control allows you to retrieve data from many different data sources, class tags, text files, even databases. So just to make a quick demonstration here, I'm gonna use Notepad to create a simple CSV file. 2, 3, B, C, very well. And then I can save this file in any directory from my computer. I'm gonna save into the applications root directory, which is not mandatory, but it's a good practice. So if I copy this project somewhere else, the CSV file goes along with the directory of the application. So for instance, test.csv, save this file. And here I can go to data sources, define here the name of the file, test.csv, and I can use functions or tag values between curly braces. So I'm going to use the function getAppPath, which returns the path of the application, and concatenate it with the file name, which is test.csv. So you can change the path or the name of the file dynamically using tags or expressions between curly braces. In this case, using comma as the delimiter, but could be any other character. And here in columns, I just define labels for the columns, like for instance, machine and production. Save it. Let's save this screen, for instance, with the name main, and make main the startup screen. So when I run the project, IndoSoft retrieves the data from the file and displays the data on the screen. Very easy to retrieve data from a CSV file and display on the screen. And the user can even change values here, like just click on the columns and change the values. If I open Notepad again and try to open this CSV file, test.csv, notice that the values have been updated. So it's very simple to open and display data from CSV files. And not only from CSV files, but also from databases. So I'm going to use Microsoft Access as the example, but could be any database. Could be SQL Server, Sybase, Oracle, MySQL, any database. I'm going to create a new one here. So a simple MDB file with the name Stump Expert Afternoon. Great. And create a single table here called table 1 with the columns, let's call C1, C2, where C1 is a text, C2 is a number. Very well. And just enter some values so I can display some values on the screen. So save the table 1. Oh, have to call this one a different name, C2. Very well. And here I can enter some values just to test. 10, 20, 30. Good enough? Now from IndoSoft, if you want to link IndoSoft to any external database, all you have to do is go to Project, Options, Default Database, select here the provider for your database, Oracle, SQL Server. In this case, the JET provider for a MDB file. Can look here in Documents, the file Stump Expert Afternoon. Test the connection succeeded, and it's done. I have a connection with this MDB file. Then on the screen, all I have to do is create a new grid control and set its data source to database. Now here in database settings, I can browse for the tables. In this case, just have table 1. And in columns, I define the columns I want to read data from, C1 and C2, where C2 is a number. Save it. Go back here to the runtime. IndoSoft retrieves data from the database and displays the data on the screen. And just like a CSV file, I can click here, write data into the database. And if I go back there to open the database with Microsoft Access, sorry, you would see the updated values. So IndoSoft is truly reading and writing data from this database without any scripting. All you have to do is configure the objects and fill in the blanks. Now back to the original question, which was how to filter data. Regardless of the data source, whether it is a class tag, a text file, or a database, the grid object allows you to filter data. For example, one way of doing that is clicking here on the advanced button from the grid control and write the filter condition in the condition filter. Like for instance, I can say here C2 greater than 3, for example. It's a valid condition. I save it, and now this one just shows the rows where C2 is greater than 3. In this case, all of them. So let's create a filter that removes some of the columns. So greater than 30, for example. Save it. Now it just shows the row B, which is the only value where C2 is greater than 30. You can hard code the filter just like I did, but in most cases you want to change the filtering condition dynamically during the runtime. So IndoSoft allows you to use tags or expressions here between curly braces and change the filter condition on the fly. For instance, I'm going to create a tag here called filter between curly braces. Let's create this tag filter. And here on the screen, just to make something quick, so I'm gonna write here max value, and I will allow the user to input a value to the tag filter here and save. Now when I change the value of this tag filter during the runtime, I have to tell the grid to reload the values. So here in the grid control, I can go to advance and create a tag here in this reload field. In this case, I'm creating a tag called reload. So after writing the max value, I can create a button here with the text apply filter. And when I click on this button, all I have to do is toggle the tag reload. Save it. So if I say now show values with max value greater than 20, apply filter, I see only the records where the maximum value is greater than 20. Greater than 50, just one row now. Greater than 1000, no rows. Greater than 0, all rows. So that's how you can change the filter of the grid object on the fly using the condition filter. In some specific cases, when you are retrieving data from databases, you might want to create filter conditions and modify the SQL statement to create more sophisticated interfaces to the database. In this case, instead of using here the condition field from the grid control, you can concatenate the SQL statement under data sources in the table field. So the grid control executes select whatever columns you defined from whatever you have here in table 1, and you can concatenate the SQL statement where and then your condition, like C2 greater than the value of the tag filter between curly braces. In this case, you just need to come back here to the database connection, advanced, and disable delimiters. So you can have something more than just the table name in the data source settings. Very well. Let's save and run again. And if I change here, let's say to 50, apply filter, you see that the filter is working just like before. But now I'm concatenating the filter option in the table field of the grid control instead of using the condition field from the grid control. So I have another question here. I use quite a bit machine vision equipment. Can you review the use of Activex controls and how it's applied in IndoSoft? maybe drop an ActiveX control into the screen and review the settings. Be more than happy to do that. So IndoSoft Web Studio is an ActiveX container. It means that you are able to load on the IndoSoft screens ActiveX controls, which are objects created by other companies that comply with a standard technology called ActiveX. So here in the graphical editor, you have the link for ActiveX controls, and you see the list of all the ActiveX controls installed in this particular computer. So I'm going to use, for instance, the Microsoft web browser, which is an ActiveX control created by Microsoft, which is pretty much Internet Explorer, just like Internet Explorer, but in the format of a ActiveX control. I'm going to change the background color of this screen. Let's use something darker here so you can see better where the ActiveX control is. And there are two ways of interacting with ActiveX controls. One is just by double clicking on the control and clicking here in configuration. So you can link tags to properties of the ActiveX control to get, in other words, read values from the properties to the tags. To set, if you want to write values from the IndoSoft tags to the properties of the ActiveX controls, or to do both, read from the ActiveX control to the tag, and if you change the value of the tag, we write the value to the property automatically. Methods are like functions of the ActiveX controls, and you can use tags here as well parameters here, different tags, assign different tags to other parameters to trigger the execution of any methods from the ActiveX control. And events. So here in events, we show all the events that are triggered by the ActiveX control, and you can come here to script and write a script that will be executed when the ActiveX control executes each one of those events. So the list of properties, methods, and events changes from ActiveX control to ActiveX control, but in IndoSoft Web Studio you have a standard interface to link tags to properties, to any properties, or to trigger any methods, or to execute scripts based on any events from the specific ActiveX control that you are using. A second way to interact with ActiveX controls is through VB script, which is natively supported by IndoSoft Web Studio. So I can give a name to this control, for instance, MB for my browser, and then create a button here on the screen. And let's give the caption here Google, for example. So when I click on this button, I can write the name of the control, MB, dot, and then I see all the methods and properties from this ActiveX control. For instance, navigate to, and the first parameter is the URL, google.com, for example. Save it. So when I click here on the button Google, I execute the method navigate to, passing the name of the Google website, the URL, as the parameter, and the ActiveX control executes the method and loads the Google website. And I can pass any URL to open any content that you may want to visualize in the browser. For instance, if I want to visualize a PDF, for example. So I'm going to change the label here to multi-CP driver. And I execute the same method, navigate to, but now the path is get product path and DRV subfolder, and open the manual multicp.pdf. Save it. Now if I click on this button, I load this PDF and display it on the screen. If I click on this button, I show the Google website, and vice versa. So in this case, I'm using the Microsoft web browser Activex control, but you can use those techniques to any Activex control that you want to embed to Windows Soft Web Studio. Microsoft Media Player to play videos, Activex controls from cameras to display live images from cameras on the screen, remote desktop Activex controls to visualize the desktop from a remote computer, and so on and so forth. So looking for more questions here. How can I restrict the alarm reset authority for just 3 of 200 alarms to maintenance technicians only while allowing production techs to reset the remaining 197 alarms? So for some alarms, you'd like to require a particular user rights, and for other alarms you'd like to require a different user rights. So there are different ways of doing that, but one way would be to create alarms in different groups. So let's say I create alarm here, A. If A is greater than 1, then alarm A, for example. Alarm B. If B is higher than 1, alarm B. Save. Okay. So I have here alarms A and B in this group 1. Then I can create another group, for instance, with the alarm C. High, limit 1, alarm C. Very well. Very well. Now on the screen, I'm going to create another screen here. One way of doing that would be to create 2 alarm controls on the screen, and on each alarm control define a different access level. For example, create one alarm control here that filters display information only from the group 1, so only alarms A and B, and another alarm control here that displays information only from the group 2. And in this first alarm control, under advanced, you change the security level to be a security level from users that are from the technicians group, for example. And in this second alarm control, you change here in advanced the security level to be the security level from the users that are from the maintenance group or whatever it is. So with different alarm groups, alarm summaries, you can display different alarms and allow users from different groups to acknowledge alarms from each one of those controls. This is one way of doing that. Other way would be to show all alarms in this alarm control. There you go. And here you can even say if you want the user to be able to acknowledge the alarms from the control or not, you can disable that if you want. You can create a security level here too high so no users can acknowledge directly from the control. And in filters, you can write group 0, which means display alarms from all the groups. Here in advanced, you have the option here called first row text, which or selected tag value, whatever it is, but let's go to the first row text, and you can write here in this tag the name of a string tag, and then create here a ACK button, acknowledge button, and in this ACK button you check the value of the string tag, which has the message and, for instance, the group number, and if it is group 1, you check if the the current group is technician and then acknowledge the alarm. Otherwise, you check if the alarm is from the group 2, and if it is from the group 2, check the current group, and if it is maintenance, then you allow to acknowledge the alarm. In this case, you need to write a small script here, maybe 5-7 lines, but then you can use a single alarm summary to display all the alarms. The technique with 2 alarm controls is, from the configuration point of view, simpler. How do I give dual input for object? For example, if I select object pump and I meet pump status on off, how can I assign the same since pump has one property? I believe the question is how to use a single pump object, and when I click on this object, I either turn the pump on or off. If that's the question, then I can go here to the library of symbols. And if I go here, for instance, to pumps, there are many pumps in the library. I can pick one of them, click on the screen, and all you have to do is trigger a tag here to toggle the pump on or off. So for instance, I'm gonna use the tag A here. Save it. Let's save this screen as test. Close this one and run to open the screen. So I click on the pump and I toggle, in this case, tag A, which is actually in this case, in this symbol, tag A is just the state, so it would change the state of the pump. If you want to customize this symbol, you can unlink the linked symbol, ungroup it, and then you will see that you have 2 symbols. One is the red one, another one is the green one. I'm gonna remove the position from them so I can create this symbol from the scratch. So what you could do here is, in this red symbol, you apply a position and say I want to display this symbol only if the tag A is equal to 0. So only if the pump is off. And I create a command here, so when I click on this pump, I set the tag A to 1. In this other object, I create a position saying show the symbol only if A is 0, only is 1, only if the pump is on. And when I click on this icon, then I set A to 0 to turn it off. So I can align those objects again, group them, and go to the runtime. Save it. We have online configuration. Now I click on the red pump. I set tag A to 1 and show the green valve. Click again. I reset tag A and show the red valve, the red pump. So each time I click on the pump, I can toggle this tag. In some cases, you have 2 tags to the PLC. One to turn the pump on and another one to turn the pump off. So no problem. I can ungroup here and I can create 2 tags. For instance, let's create one called pump off, and I show this symbol if pump off is equal to 1. Very well. And here I make pump off equals to 0 and pump on equals to 1. So when I click on this button, I set pump off to 0 and pump on to 1 to turn on the pump. But I show this icon only if the pump off is equal to 1. So let's say here, just for protection, or if they are both 0. Pump off equals to 0 and pump on equals to 0. So when I start the application, they are both 0, and I show the pump as off. For this one, all I have to do is show if pump on is equal to 1, simpler than this one. And here in command, when I click here, I make pump on equals to 0 and pump off equals to 1. Very simple. Group those valves, those pumps again, run the application, and I click here, turn the pump on and off, and I keep toggling those 2 bits now instead of 1 bit. A question that's related to this one, in many projects you have not one pump but several pumps. So instead of creating this symbol over and over manually, what you can do is, like I said at the beginning, plan the application and create classes and linked symbols. So you just have to create the objects once. So let's see how it works. Here in class, I can create a class called cpump, for example, and have the members on and off, for example. So far, I have not created any tags. This is just a class with the definition of one pump. The pump has the command on and off. Then I can create one tag, for instance, called pump, and the type of this tag is the class cpump. So I have pump.off and pump.on. And if I have 10 pumps in my project, I can set the array size to 9, from 0 to 9, or to 10. There are some customers that do not like to use the position 0. Now back to the object, if I ungroup here, Indosoft provides one feature called linked symbols, which allows you to create one generic symbol and create alias to the properties. So you can customize those alias, those custom properties for each instance of this symbol. Let's say how it works. I can create here, instead of using the tag pump off, create one alias called pump. So the syntax is # property name colon, and then the syntax for the default value. Let's say pump1 off. So here the syntax is going to be pump1 off equals to 1, or pump1 off is equal to 0, and pump1 on equals to 0. But every time I use the tag name, I use the custom property name pump before it. So I'm using an alias for all those tags. And I can use the same alias to different members of the same class tag. So here in properties, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. And I'll do the same thing for this other object here. For pump on and for pump off. And finally here in this position. Very well. I can group the objects like before. And now to create a linked symbol, all I have to do is right click and select the option create linked symbol. So I can create here the symbol my pump. Now this pump is the tag pump index 1. And if I copy it, I can change this one to be pump index 2. If I go to a different screen, I can go to graphics, symbols, and here under project symbols, I have my pump. And I click here and I change it, for instance, to pump index 3. And let's say here one more 4. Just one more 5. So now I'm creating many pumps very quickly, and they all follow the rules, the syntax from my master symbol, from the pump that I had to create just once. And if I want to create 5 more pumps, I can copy those, just click Control, drag and drag, click and drag. Then I can group those pumps and use the replace function, which is very useful when you use here replace by parts, tags, and properties. So I can change only the array indexes to be 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So very quickly, if I ungroup here, you'll see I have pump 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if I save it, now I can control each one of those pumps individually. And I just had to create the symbol once. So that's the power of classes and linked symbols in the Soft Web Studio. So another question is, can you retrieve bitmap images from a Windows file folder and display on the screen? Setting the ability to open just the folder with the image. I believe the question has two parts here. One is if we can display images from a bitmap on the screen. The answer is yes, and I'll demonstrate really quickly here. And the second one is if we can allow the user to select bitmaps from a particular folder. So let's see how to display images. Could be bitmaps, could be JPEGs, could be GIFs, could be different types of pictures, and display those pictures here on the screen. Sorry. So in graphics, we have the linked pictures. And you can browse from pictures in different directories of your computer. So just to make a quick test here, I'm gonna create some bitmaps here. So I'm gonna create this one as one bitmap, copy, paintbrush, could be CorelDRAW, could be different tools here. So paste here, make this bitmap a little bit smaller, very good. And I'll save this one as ctemp, let's say test1.bmp. Save it as a bitmap file. And then I come here, and let's say take this thank you, paste here. Oops, I just overwrote the previous one. So I'm gonna keep this one as the test one and copy this one again, copy here, make smaller, paste, and now save as test2. So I have those two bitmaps, test1 and test2, just to make a quick example. Then in IndoSoft, I can go to linked picture, go for instance to ctemp, and let's say test1, and boom, I display this bitmap on the screen. I can click here and resize, change the height, the width, whatever it is. So this is how I display this bitmap. If I save here and run the application, I see this bitmap on the screen. But a very powerful tool here is the ability to change this bitmap on the fly. For example, I can double click on the bitmap control. Could be a JPEG, again, a GIF, a PNG. We support many different formats. And instead of leaving it hard-coded as it is, use a tag here between curly braces. Like for instance, I'll create a tag called pick and create buttons here. So for instance, I can use this one when I click on this button. So let's say test1. When I click on this button, I set the tag pick to test1. And when I click on this other button, I just change the value of the tag pick to test2. Save it. So now just make sure the tag pick, the tag pick has to be string. So let me change here the value of the tag pick to be a string. Very well. Save it. Now I click here, I show test 1. I click here, I show test 2. So just by changing the value of one tag, I can dynamically show different pictures on the screen. And obviously you can create scripts and any other kind of conditions to change those pictures dynamically during the runtime. One last comment here, which I believe has to do with the second question, is if I can allow the user to select pictures on the fly. And the answer is yes. So I can use pick here to be, for instance, the whole path and name of the file. And in IndoSoft, we have this function called rdfilein. So rdfilein, it allows the user to browse for files and writes to a tag the path and name of the file that was selected by the user. So the first argument is the name of the tag that will receive the path and name of the file selected by the user. The next one is the default path. The next one is the mask. And the last one is if the user has the rights to navigate to different directories or not. So I can save it. Click here. Oh, let me just change the label of this button to browse, for example. Save it. It has online configuration. So I can click on this button. It shows here test 1 and test 2. I can select test 1 and show test 1. Can click again, select test 2 and show test 2. If you do not want to allow the operator to browse files from different directories, just set the last property to 0. Sorry. Save it. And now I just have the options test 1 and test 2. And by selecting one of those files, I change the picture that I display on the fly. So another question. One question is, for the pumps, can you animate the colors instead of having a stack of pumps? Absolutely yes. In this particular one, I'm using bitmaps that have a specific format, but if you create the pumps using the native controls from IndoSoft Web Studio, you'll be able to animate the pumps, the colors to green, red, yellow, whatever it is, using just the native tools from IndoSoft Web Studio. For example, let's create something quick and dirty here, like create something like this, and here this one, and let's say no border, and copy this object here, no border, and group those guys. Change the color if you want, let's say whatever color you want, and I can spend more time to create lines and details, but just for sake of time, let's assume that's the shape for my pump. Then I can go to graphics, apply a color dynamic to this control, and control the color of this pump, for instance, just to do quickly, according with the tag A, to be, for instance, red. Can even have an effect here from center, either red or one being green, and I can apply here the same type of effects. Okay, and when I click on this control, I can toggle the tag A, for example. Save it. Oh, let me change the dynamic just to be, in this case, flat will be easier to visualize. And here, this green, for example. Save it. So I click here, goes green, I click here, goes red. So in this case, I'm using the built-in color change animation to change the color of the control. So you can change the color of any object, any groups of objects created using the native tools, the native shapes from Indosoft Web Studio. Can I change the standard color? The same question. I'm being okay. Some thank you notes here. Thank you for the questions. I have some additional questions here. How do I use, can I generate reports in Excel? The answer is yes, and there are different ways to create those reports in Excel. But the simplest one, the easiest one for sake of time here, is to generate CSV files that can be opened in Excel. So just to make a very quick demonstration, Indosoft has a built-in function called file write. So let's say create file. So I can create here a variable called ID, another one file name. So first I'm going to define the file name. I'm going to use get app path, which returns the current path of the application, and myfile.csv. And then, for instance, for ID equals to 1 to 10, next do something like execute the function file write, where the first argument is the name of the file. So let's say file name. The next one is the content of the row. So let's say, for instance, I want to display the value of the tag date and comma and the value of the tag time and comma and for instance the number 100 times the range function, just to have a random number there. So this expression here is the content of the row, and the last argument is a flag that indicates if you want to append the file and if you want to create the file as Unicode or ANSI. So using the number 4 here, actually 3, you will append this file as a ASCII file. And I'm creating a file with 10 rows, just a very simple test. So I can run here the application, click here in create file. Now if I go to Windows Explorer on the directory of my application, I have here myfile.csv, and Indosoft opens this file with the date, comma, the time, comma, the value. And in this case I saved the file as Unicode, so I can delete the file here and go back here and change the flag, actually a different button, and change the flag here to 1 to append the values in an ANSI file, in an ANSI format. So create the file again. I have my file here again. And now, since it's an ANSI file, Excel divides the columns automatically in the CSV file. So instead of just hard coding values or using random values, you could use expressions with actual tag values or values from an external database, any values. But the bottom line is, using the function file write, you can very easily drop information to a CSV file that can be opened in Excel as an Excel report. There are other ways to push data to Excel. There are some sample applications available from the Indosoft website, but this is the quickest and fastest way to generate a report with data that can be opened with Excel. Some questions if this recording will be available after the webinar, and the answer is yes. We're going to post this video to our website either today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to review this webinar from the Indosoft website. Not only this webinar, but all the webinars hosted by Indosoft are available to download from the Indosoft website. So just to show really quick, if you go in the current website to indosoft.com, under support, videos and webinars, you have here the list of all the previous webinars, and today or tomorrow we are going to include a new webinar here with the content from today. Very well. Let me look for additional questions. Some thank you notes. Again, thank you for the questions. How do I force a function or a subroutine to be executed at the server when I call it from a thin client? Very interesting and common question. As most of you know, all the screens from Indosoft Web Studio can be visualized from remote thin clients, web thin clients or secure viewer thin clients. But when I create functions in the global procedures and I call those functions from the screen, in some cases I want to execute the function on the thin client. In other cases I want to execute the function on the server. So I have the option here to create a function, like for instance, let's say function my test in function. And let's say that in this function I set the tag a equals to a plus 1, something dummy as that. If I create a button here on the screen, there we go, a button here on the screen, and I call this function using, for instance, call test, this function will be executed on the station where the button was pressed. So if you press this button from a web thin client, this function will be executed on the web thin client station. And if the tag A is a local tag, the local tag A on the thin client will be updated. In some cases, you want to trigger the function from the web thin client, but you want to make sure that the function is executed on the server. For instance, if you want to save a file on the server or load values from files on the server, then you can use the Indosoft built-in function run global procedure on server. And you just specify the name of the function you want to execute, and if you have parameters, one or more parameters for the function. So if I click on this button now from a thin client, the function test will be executed on the server, not on the thin client stations. Interesting question. Another question is how to rename a screen. It's a common question as well, and the easiest way to do that is by the following process. For instance, let's say you want to rename the screen test to my test. Then you open the screen test, you click here on the Indosoft logo, save as the new name like my test. Now I have the screen my test, and right click here and delete the old screen test. So this is how you can, in quotes, rename a screen with a different name. You just save the screen with a different name and delete the previous one. Very simple, very quick, very fast. How do I detect that the combo box index changed on the screen to trigger another action? That's a good question as well, because we provide the scheduler module, which allows you to detect that tags changed of values. But especially when you have a thin client, sometimes you want to detect in the thin client, in the screen itself, if a tag changed of value. For instance, if it is a new combo box selection, whatever it is, and you don't have the scheduler module running on the thin client. So here's the technique you can use to detect tag changes on the thin client. Let's say I have a combo box here. And just to make a quick test, I can have some options A, B, C, D. And I'm gonna have a tag here called pause on the position. So this tag shows the position from the combo box. Can use a rectangle here to display the value of the tag pause. So as we change the values on the combo box, the tag pause should change of value as well. So just save it, run it. Very well. Now if I select different options, the tag position changes. But how would I know that this tag changed of value to trigger something else? Then here on the screen, I can go to screen attributes, create a variable, for instance, var pause. And here in the while open, I can check if var pause is different from the tag pause, then I make the variable var pause equal to the tag pause and do whatever I want to do. For instance, in this case, I'll show a message box, hello. And when I open the screen, I make the var pause equal to the tag pause. So when I open the screen, var pause is equal to the tag pause. If I change the selection in the combo box, the tag pause will be different from the variable var pause. Then I make them the same and execute whatever I want to execute. In this case, show a message box. So let's see how it works. Save it, run. So if I change here to C, I see the message box, hello. If I change to B, I see the message box, hello. And so on and so forth. So now every time I change the value of the tag pause, I show the message box. But in your case, could be do anything else. Retrieve data from the database, save a report, show a message box, whatever you want to do. How do I use the scheduler to create a delay for the tags? There are two ways to create delays. So many times you want to trigger an action, wait a period of time, and then execute another action. Like for instance, you click a button, set a tag, and wait for, let's say, 3 seconds, and then reset this tag. There are at least two different ways of doing that. One way is using the scheduler. So I'm going to create here a button. So when I click on this button, I make the tag A equals to 1. And I want to change the color of this button according with the value of the tag A. So I save it. When tag A is 0, so it's red. I click here. I set tag A to 1. But now tag A remains in 1. If I want to reset this tag within the HMI itself after, let's say, 3 seconds, one way of doing that would be using the scheduler module. So I can say here that every second I want to increment a counter plus 1, except when the tag A is equal to 0. So if tag A is equal to 0, I stop counting, incrementing this counter. And when the tag A changes of value, I reset the counter. But if tag A is 1, the counter keeps incrementing. And finally, I can say whenever the counter changes, I want to make the tag A equals to 0 unless counter is lower than 3. So if counter reaches 3, I enable this line and I reset the tag A. Save it, run. So I click on the button and in 3 seconds it should turn red again because the scheduler resets this button after 3 seconds. Other way of doing that would be with a simple script. So I'm going to create another button here with the tag B, and very similar. When I click on this button, I set the tag B to 1. But now tag B remains in 1. With this other technique now, I don't need an extra tag. I don't need a counter tag. All I have to do is create a script. So I can right click here and create another script. So for instance, for delay, tag, reset, whatever it is. And I can check here. If dateDiff, this is a VB function that checks the difference between two timestamps. So if the difference in seconds between the timestamp of the tag B and the current date and time, which is now, is greater than 2, then set tag B to 0. There is just one caveat in this simple script here. The timestamp field from the tag B returns date, time in milliseconds, and the dateDiff function does not support milliseconds. So I can use here this function strGetElements from this timestamp using dot as the delimiter and retrieving the first element to remove the dot milliseconds from the timestamp. And now it should work. So I can click on this button, it goes to 1, and 3 seconds later the script resets it back to 0. And in this case I don't need an additional tag, and in a single line in my script I can reset this tag after a number of seconds. So we are approaching the end of the webinar. If you have further questions, feel free to send it to us at any time. But I would like, first of all, give you here the contact for Indosoft. This information is available on the website as well. Feel free to contact us by email, phone, the live chat from the Indosoft. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And we are releasing new videos all the time on YouTube. So please be in touch and let us know your ideas, what you think. Indosoft, the way how the product evolves and the company evolves is really based on your feedback. So please let us know whenever you have suggestions, questions, or any kind of comments. They are very welcome. And finally, I would like to thank you very much for participating of this webinar, and thank you for all your questions. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you again in the next Indosoft webinar. Thank you everybody, and have a good one.